At Sunday Surefire, we have a vision, and that vision is to dish out the most sound fantasy and betting advice in the industry. And guess what? It just so happens that our brand new sponsor at KYMZ Oils has a vision too. Together, we'll give you the fresh picks, and KYMZ will give you all the fresh scents. Beautiful match. All you got to do is Google KYMZ Oils and try out their top seller, Vision, to start smelling fresh today. Make sure to use promo code KYMZ Surefire for an extra 5% off. That's KYMZ Oils. Remember, just Google it. You'll find it. First thing that comes up, promo code KYMZ Surefire.
Sunday Surefire Podcast. I'm your host, the Commish. Joining me today is the co-host, Aaron Downtown Brown.
Hey.
Aaron, how we doing, my man?
Oh, we're doing, man. Another week in the books. Got my first Chiefs win. I had some fantasy wins. I'm doing good. How was your week too?
Yeah, I'm a little envious of your Chiefs getting their first win because my New England Patriots are over here just refusing to get a win on their home field to start the season. That was a rough go of it the last couple of weeks. But hopefully they can bring home a must-win, basically a must-win game here against the Jets in Week 3. But more to follow on that. We have a lot to get to for Week 3. But before we turn the page from Week 2 completely, we're gonna do some told you so's. But Aaron, why don't you tell listeners what we were able to win one of our loyal listeners this past week?
We actually had a fan reach out to us playing the $1 million game and came within the top 200. So had a very nice payday, over $700 on a $20 buy-in. Got the shout out there. Definitely makes you feel good. Obviously, when we're giving out advice week to week. So love hearing that. I know we had another pretty decent week 2 in DFS. Commish, I know that you had a good one. You beat Ethan and I, so you have a lot to brag about as well.
I do, yeah. I buried you guys this week in our head-to-head. Dropped a $1.74 this week, which would have scored pretty well in the $15 entry as well in those big tournaments. But I guess with that, we'll just jump right into the told you so's here. And I actually wasn't on the pod last week, but I was fortunate enough to be able to send you my picks for the week, and you did rattle them off. So I'll take a quick little victory lap here. So
you like that? You like that?
Yeah, I'll tell you who liked that. Everyone who listened and took this advice liked that. That's for sure. So here I go on my lap of victory. My bullish buy last week, Saquon Barkley, 27 points, returned you 3 times your investment. My defense of the week was the Dallas Cowboys defense. They were expensive. They were $4,000, but they gave you 15 points, which was almost 4 times your investment. My pick 6 guy, Zach Ertz, 11.6 points, 3.5 times your investment. My guy that I've been hyping up all offseason here, another cheap guy, was Puka Nacua, dropped 30 points here, Mr. NFL target leader, 6 times your investment there if you put him in your lineup. And, of course, our captain's games from the Thursday night game was TJ Hawkinson, 38 points here. He got in that captain slot here. He was a little expensive, but he still gave you 3x as well. So not surprisingly here with all those guys I'm calling out in the Told You So segment that they did well, that I was able to bring home the win in week 2. So that's what I got for a Told You So's, Aaron. Anyone you want to shout out?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely outshined me last week, but I do want to call out, calling out Keenan Allen. I think from time to time when we call it our bullish buys, where they're all usually pretty expensive, 8,000 plus, but Keenan Allen was only $7,100 last week in your lineup, and I was extremely bullish with him. He had 8 catches, 111 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kind of knew that game script that's what's going to happen. So that he would have scored you 34 points. So I know a lot of the top winners in those tournaments had to have Keenan in there as well. And then the other guy I want to call out was I know I called out Gainwell in the Eagles game and the under the lights I said, hey, if you pay attention to his injury status, sub in Swift, and Swift ended up having a great game. Instead, had the 175 yards and 1 touchdown. So if he was in your captain's lineup, he would have gave you 45 points as well. So my main two calls was Keenan Allen and DeAndre Swift of last week.
There we go. There we go. All right, that's gonna put a pin in week 2. No more gloating. Let's get back to work here. Let's start talking to the people about who they should be buying in on for week 3. And we'll start with our bullish buy category where we talk about the expensive, high profile players that you have to drop a decent chunk of change to get them in your lineup. But who this week, Aaron, in your estimation, is going to be worth that high price tag in week 3?
All right, all right. So I thought I could get slightly creative in this section here. We don't have our guy Ethan Weaver. We're giving him the week off. I guess I'm welcoming a new family member to his family. So I guess you got to get your priorities straight, which we gave him the week off. But I guess with that being said, I'm gonna sneak in an extra guy here in this section. Going with a guy that I guess you made fun of to bring up here. Say, hey, Justin Jefferson's pretty good at football. When I looked at all the prices this week, 9,300, I'm like, wow, there's no way I'm gonna play Justin Jefferson this week. But then when I started looking at him, like, I gotta get him in my lineup. That LA Minnesota game over under 54.5 points. So I ended up stacking Justin Jefferson this week with Kirk Cousins. Cousins is only 6,900. So I like the stack in that high over this week. Cousins also has 700 yards thrown for 6 touchdowns. And then the funny thing is, out of all those 6 touchdowns, 0 of went to Jay Jeff. So I think another big week of scoring, another big week for Justin Jefferson. He is averaging over 150 yards per game. So I think he's going to have a third week, and he may get his first touchdown in week 3. So I'm going with the stack, Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins.
I can tell that we talk way too often over the years here, especially when it comes to DFS, because I actually have Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins in my lineup this week as well.
Nice.
Yep. JJ is my bullish buy here, and yeah, I got rolling with the stack as well. Pretty much for the same reasons that you mentioned here. The over under is 54, which makes it the highest point total on the slate. So Vegas sees points getting put on the board in bunches in this one. It's actually the only game in the 50-point range, at least when the lines opened up to start the week. And a little bit of a sneaky side note here as to why I like Jefferson in this matchup here. This is a matchup between two teams that find themselves at 0-2. It's the Chargers against the Vikings. And in those situations here, you really cannot afford to go down 0-3 to start a season. It just puts you behind the 8 ball, and the odds of making the playoffs if you start 0-3 are just absolutely abysmal. You pretty much have no shot if you do get yourself in that big hole. So when teams are in those must-win spots, they typically ride or die with their best players. And for the Minnesota Vikings, that's Justin Jefferson. He's had the target usage, he's had the receptions, the yardages, the touchdowns have not come yet. I think this is a week where he finally cracks the seal on the touchdown front for 2023, and he is my bullish buy for the week. So that's funny that we started that way, but I guess not a big shock here. I'll let you have the last word on it, though. Anything you want to say to close out this category?
No, I mean, I think just over the strategy over the week, like I said, it was just 9,300 is one of the top prices you'll see in this DFS.
Big number.
But it was just too hard to pass up. So I think this stack, I mean, but it kind of balances itself out slightly with Cousins under 7,000. So it's worth it. And I think it'll get more juicy when we get into the pick 6 section.
For sure. There's never a bad time to play Justin Jefferson. So enough about that. Let's go right to the defensive side of the ball here. And I'll start it out. I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills. They're playing at the Washington Commanders. They're $2,900 to get them into your lineup. So I did pay up for Jefferson, so I had to go a little bit cheaper on defense this week as opposed to my Dallas pick from a week ago. That was very expensive. But for a relatively low price point, the Bills are actually a pretty solid unit. They get a week 3 matchup with a Commanders team that is a surprising 2-0. But they've had the benefit of playing against a couple of weaker teams, and the Denver Broncos and the Arizona Cardinals to start their season. The Bills will definitely be the most talented team that the Commanders have played thus far on both sides of the ball. So they'll likely be forced to throw the ball more than they have the last couple of weeks. They kind of been riding Brian Robinson and playing defense, kind of an old school game that Ron Rivera is comfortable playing. But I think they're going to have to keep pace this week with the Bills. And I think when they open it up a little bit with a young quarterback and Sam Howell, he could be prone to a couple turnovers here. I think the Bills are going to be the beneficiary of that. Maybe some sacks tossed in here too. So I relatively cheap price point. I got a good unit against what I think is a mediocre offense. So that's my defensive play this week in the 2 deep category. Buffalo Bills 2,900.
Commish, I am loving it. You want to know why?
Because we're 2 for 2, aren't we?
We're 2 for 2. We're 2 for 2, my man. Yeah, I also went the Bills here, 2,900. I mean, you explained it pretty well. I think we're all, like you said, we're on the same wavelength here again. I mean, if you're looking at the Washington offense, their third down conversion, they're trending at 30% conversion rate on the air on third down. So that is like right when the Bills can force those turnovers. I think, as you said, if you can kind of turn that game over into a more of a need of passing the ball, Sam Howell, I think he's going to be up for his first real test in the NFL. So I do think the Bills will force some turnovers and get them down in the third and longs that they're already proving they're not so good at. So Bills, like you said, are a top tier defense. They've been a top 4 in the league the last 2 years. Want to try to make that a third year in a row. So yeah, we're definitely 2 for 2 in this section. I also went with Buffalo Bills, but I love it for the price point, getting them under 3,000.
You were actually technically 3 for 2 with a Cousins call out in there as well. Just
That's true. That's true.
So as far as if there's any mathematicians keeping score at home, we're actually ahead of the game here, if you will. So let's move away from this. Let's get away from the consensus here, from the defenses and the studs. Those guys are all good, but this is where the nitty gritty here, where you really get ahead in your lineups. These cheaper guys that you can identify. This is our pick 6 category. I'll give it to you here for the first one. We're each going to rattle off 3 of them, so we'll do that in alternating fashion here, Aaron. Who's your first pick 6 player that's relatively cheap that you think is going to be successful in week 3?
All right, so I'll go ahead and say my guys from greatest to least, starting with my most expensive, but still hitting that price point we've talked about. So for 5,400, I'm going Isaiah Pacheco. Going with the homer pick here. Chiefs player against Chicago Bears, and yes, it's going to end up being the 3rd week in a row we picked on the Chicago Bears defense. I think Pacheco's in for a nice week. I mean, he is averaging 4.6 yards per carry on the year. Another one, zero, just like Jay Jeff, zero touchdowns on the year so far. Not really, Chiefs unit in general hasn't really got off to a hot start. So I think this is going to be a get right game for the Chiefs against the Bears, where they just came off giving up over 120 rushing yards last week as well. So I think Pacheco. I think in the Chiefs, they'll get up on the Bears, and I think they're going to want to run it. Kind of end the game here towards the end. So I'm going to Pacheco for only 5,400 as actually one of my top running backs in my lineup this week.
I know that you gave a lot of nice stats there on your boy Pacheco and reasons why that you thought he was gonna be fantasy gold this week. But I know that in your head, when you bring up one of your Chiefs players, all that's really running through your dome is yeah. That's what I heard. All I heard you say right there. But okay, but yeah, I like the game flow for Kansas City as well. I'm not going to touch too much on that one because I have more to say about that game in a bit. So I'll put a pin on that one here for now, and I'll go to my first bullish buy, my first pick 6 rather. My most expensive one here is Tyler Algier. He's playing at Detroit for $5,100. And for those that listen to our show in the offseason, you'll know that this is a player I was really negative on throughout the course of the offseason, more so with the Bijan Robinson pick coming in. Just thinking that he was going to be stealing the show, and to an extent that he has, but Algier's gotten a lot more usage than I thought that he would. The first 2 games here, he's seen a total of 34 touches this year. And when I'm looking to go cheap on a player, I want either a guy who's linked to a high-scoring offense, or I want someone I can bank on at least some relative amount of volume. And for in a committee league at running back, getting 15, 16 touches per game in your lineup is all you can ask for a player in DFS, where you're paying just over $5,000 to get him in there. So I thought he fit the mold of a good pick 6 player, nice and cheap here right out of the gate here. So what do you think about Algier?
I'm gonna have to agree with you in the fact where I've been definitely surprised over his volume usage. I think I definitely listened to you in the off season as well. It was like, hey, Algier is going to be forgotten about. I think they definitely use him. I'm not sold on him yet. I think this is going to be kind of a tough week 3 for Atlanta. They're going to have to maybe pass a little bit more this week too. So I'm not sure if it's going to scream like their normal run heavy approach this week. So I'm gonna be against it, but I will say that I am also surprised with his usage. So I mean, I could be wrong here. I mean, the trend is showing they're using him a lot, but I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say it's not. It's gonna be a little bit of a turn this week for him.
I guess a good part of that really depends on how you see this game unfolding. We know Detroit has a high powered offense who can go off and score points, but to this point so far this year, they've actually been in some tight games. They went to the wire in an overtime game with Seattle last week. And then in week 1, they were in a very competitive game, as you know, against your Kansas City Chiefs, going into Arrowhead, pulling out the win. So I think that Detroit is as lethal as they are on offense. They're going to be missing some pieces on defense too. And I think the Falcons, they kind of like to just get in there and get into a bar fight, muddy up the game a little bit, and pounding it. So I think that's going to be the strategy out of the gate. Maybe it doesn't go well if Detroit gets ahead and Bijan's kind of the favorable guy, maybe more so on passing downs. But for a cheap price point, I'm willing to roll the dice here on that, and we'll see how it works out. But go to someone else here. Let me know who else you're playing for cheap this week.
All right, all right. So moving on down, I'm going 3,600 in a wide receiver spot. I'm going to go with Tank Dell with the Houston Texans playing against the Jaguars this week. So it's funny hearing a Texans wide receiver. I think in the offseason where we were kind of leery of them. Nico Collins just coming off a pretty decent week, but Tank Dell actually just came off a 7 reception game, 72 yards, and a tutty. He did tie Nico Collins for the most targets last week with the Texans. And that's as a result of the Noah Brown injury, right? So it kind of was going to be Noah Brown starting there, but after his injury, I think Tank Dell is going to take over that wide receiver 2 spot, which may go back and forth all year between him and Nico. But I think as we've said in the past, we like the positive game script in DFS and a PPR competition with Houston wide receivers. So I think the game script is going to be another good one for a lot of passing opportunities. And with CJ Stroud actually he throwing over 300 yards last week. So I think it's pointing up for Tank Dell, and it was also a guy that had a tremendous preseason as well. So I think different directions are pointing that Tank's going to keep getting involved in the offense. So I went Tank Dell 3,600 for the Houston Texans.
3,600 is a cheap price point. I can't wait to see who you have for your least expensive play this week. Yeah, I mean, I like Tank Dell coming out too. It's kind of funny. His name's Tank. He's 5'8", $165, soaking wet. Yeah, he did make his presence known in week 2, and I was a big fan of CJ Stroud too. So I won't blame you for it, especially for under $4,000. You can kind of get away with whatever you want on that front. So yeah, you can roll them in there and see how it goes. I would rather play. I'm going back to your Kansas City Chiefs game here. I said I was going to. I'm going to go a little bit more expensive than that. $4,700 to get Roschon Johnson of the Chicago Bears in my lineup. They're playing at Kansas City this week. And I don't think Chicago has a shot to win this game. As you referenced earlier, I think Kansas City, this is their get right spot where they kind of just beat the crap out of an opponent, and the Bears are going to be at their mercy, I think. But usually I don't want to start running backs who are going to be in negative game scripts where they're behind on the scoreboard. But I think if they're getting blown out in the second half, what we see happen is something similar to what happened in week 1 when the Bears fell behind when they were playing the Packers there. And that's to close out the game. Roschon was out there a ton. He ended up scoring a touchdown, but more importantly, he got a ton of check down work in the passing game. Saw 7 targets, caught 6 of them for 35 yards. And to me, this is just a textbook case of not wanting to watch the game at all if I have Roschon in DFS. But you'll check the box score when it's over, and I think you're going to be happy with what you get out of Roschon, even if he's not super heavily involved in the first half of this game. I think by the end, just those targets, soak it up, full PPR. just soaking up those check down passes from Fields when that's what Kansas City is giving them to run the clock in the second half of that game. So I know you're going to agree with my take on how I think the game itself is going to go, but what are your thoughts on Roshan for 4,700?
Yeah, Roshan's another interesting one. I mean, to your point, he may end up overtaking that role. I think, as you said, if he's getting involved in the passing game early in the season, it's just going to turn into maybe more rushing opportunities. So I can see where you're kind of speaking in what's about to happen here. So um, I'm gonna say it's another one where I'm not like too keen on it for DFS, but I can definitely see where it's like, wow, he's not lighting up the box score, and then you do look down and he does get double digits of some kind. So I think we've said in the past, as long as I can get over 10, and he's a cheap, one of your cheaper people in your lineup, that's what you really just don't want the duds that are scoring like nothing or under 10 points. So I don't hate it, but I don't love it either.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll see how that one pans out there. Give me your last guy here. Who's the cheapest guy that you're shoving into your lineup on this week?
All right, cheapest guy and also guy that I've turned the page on a little bit. Okay, guy that kind of had to be worked into this year. I think you and Ethan were into him. And yeah, you'll probably like hearing this, but I'm going 3,400. I'm gonna go with Dalton Kincaid as my tight end this week. Um, Buffalo's playing Washington. Kincaid just came off of another six target, 43-yard game. So just another, average game, but it's definitely getting his looks and his, what you want to see from week to week as far as targets go. He's another guy. I'm kind of going with a theme this week in week 3 is like just players that have not scored a touchdown on the season, but are trending that direction, right? Um, I think he gets his week 3 touchdown. I mean, Washington does have one of the best front fours in the league. I think what that translates to is Josh Allen's going to have to make quicker throws, which he's shown he does like that third read with past years with Cole Beasley. So it's funny, Kincaid kind of has turned into that Cole Beasley role, except he's kind of about a foot taller than him. But it is funny looking back. Did you know? I mean, you probably do know this, Mr. Commish, but Cole Beasley had 82 receptions 2 years in a row in 2020 and 2021.
I knew he had some productive seasons there, but I'm surprised it's quite that many.
Yeah, 80. That's what I thought. I was like, 82 is a good number, right? Good number to have. So I think Kincaid is used as that number 3. And it's funny, I think back a couple weeks ago before the season where I was kind of a Dawson Knox guy. I was like, you know what? There might be a world where both of them are relevant. I think last week was one where it kind of showed that like Knox had a touchdown and Kincaid still got targets as the third option, right? And my boy Gabe Davis got the tutty. So yeah, no, I think Kincaid, 3,400 is cheap. And I think there's going to be days in the future we're going to look back and say, wow, Dalton Kincaid was only in the 3,000. So I want to take advantage of that early in his career. And like I said, I've kind of turned the page on him, and after seeing how this Bills offense is working, so I'm going Kincaid is my last pick 6 player.
Yeah, so I like the price and I like the player. I am a Kincaid fan, as you know, coming out. I was big on him, but I don't necessarily like the call so much for this week, and it actually has a lot to do with the opponent and the Washington Commanders. Through 2 weeks, they've actually only allowed 8 total receptions to the tight end position thus far. And the Bills obviously have a number of different ways to beat you. They have obviously Diggs as the top option in the passing game, Gabe Davis, your boy Gabe Davis, and your boy James Cook as well, doing some work in the passing game too. So as high as I am on Kincaid, I looks like a tougher matchup for the tight end position and splitting reps with Dawson Knox. It's kind of just a lot of moving parts there that if he gets in the end zone, you're going to love it. But if he doesn't, I feel like you might come up a little bit short on this one for this week in particular. But I do like Kincaid in the long run. Aaron, do you want to know the tight end that you should have went with this
Ooh,
week?
tell me. Okay. Dawson Knox?
It's not Dawson Knox. It's actually the same guy that I told you about last week for the exact same price. And I know my man Ethan Weaver didn't like this call last week, but Zach Ertz of the Arizona Cardinals returned 11.6 fantasy points last week and saw 10 targets in the 8 targets in the process. And so you can get him here against the Dallas Cowboys for $3,500. Tight end 7 last week, gave you 3 times your investment, which was great. He's seen 18 total targets this season. And Aaron, do you want to guess where 18 total targets ranks for the tight end position so far this year?
That's probably first.
It's number 1 in the league. The top of the pile at tight end, your most targeted tight end through 2 weeks is Zach Ertz of arguably the worst team in the league. And look, I get why people don't love this call specifically. I get why Ethan didn't like it last week. But, the Cardinals are not a good football team. I understand, but that just means they're going to be in a lot of negative game scripts every single week, which means passing volume, passing volume, passing volume. Guys like Josh Dobbs or Clayton Tune, if he ever gets on the field, they're going to be looking for the check down to begin with. And then when these defenses start getting ahead, like I was saying a minute ago, like they stay back. They take the big play away and they give up that underneath stuff. And that's where the volume piece comes in for the tight end position. So we say all the time how volume is king on the show. So if you can get the most targeted tight end in the league for a dirt cheap price point of $3,500 in your lineup, I'm going to keep banking on that and live with the results here. Nice and cheap, unless there's an absolute stud tight end play that I love in a particular matchup here. I'm just going to keep going with this while the going's good.
I don't think I'm gonna let you tell me 2 weeks in a row. I told you so with these high volume guys against really good defenses. So last week was Puka. Puka proved that he's the real deal. So I think as we've talked about it, game script wise, these bad teams, they do end up putting up some fantasy relevant players, especially in these PPR formats. So just for my own pride, I'm not gonna say I don't like it. So we'll roll with Ertz in week 3 and see what happens here.
Okay, we'll roll with it. I'll last point on Ertz here. I know he's a fossil of a player at this point, but I like him in tournament plays this week too because people are going to look at the Dallas matchup and they're going to be like, "Oh, I hate that. There's no way he can do anything against them." But don't be afraid of it. Plug him in there. See how it works. It's $3,500. It's cheap. It's cheap. It's cheap. Get those points in your lineup at tight end that your opponents are turning down or that they're paying more for. So if you can even beat them to the punch with those on a dollar to dollar basis on a guy like Ertz, I'd be happy to roll with it. But we'll put a pin in that on the pick 6 category, and we'll go right to hot takes here. Aaron, do you want to give your hot take first, or do you want me to hit lead off here?
I'll go ahead and go first. It's funny that I think before the show I was like, I don't have a hot take yet, but I think I figured it out what I'm gonna do, and what it's gonna be is I'm gonna have everyone figure out that the props are not out yet, but go ahead and do a parlay with touchdown scores. I'm gonna say that all 3 guys that I've called out specifically this week with Justin Jefferson, Isaiah Pacheco, and Dalton Kincaid are all gonna have touchdowns. So if you throw them all 3 and an anytime parlay bet, you're probably gonna have some nice odds over there. So I know it's a little risky. Don't throw your mortgage on it. But my hot take is all 3 no touchdown guys are gonna get touchdowns in week 3.
I mean, give me a reason to throw my mortgage on an Aaron Downtown Brown last second parlay, and I'm all day on it.
Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. I'm actually kind of partially overlapping with you here with mine. Mine's I guess it's a 4-piece parlay I want to put together here. And it has to do with what we talked about right off the top of the show here with Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson with that stack. I think Jefferson goes for over 150 yards and a touchdown. And I think Cousins goes for over 300 passing yards and 3+ touchdowns on the day as well. So I parlay all 4 of those pieces together. Again, Jefferson over $150 receiving and a touchdown, and with Kirk Cousins over 300 passing and 3 tutties mixed in there too. So I'll monitor that as the player props open up. I'll drop that in our Discord as well, just to show you what the odds are roughly to give you an idea of what you can win on a parlay like that. It's definitely going to be some plus money here. And what I like about this one is that you really only need Jefferson to really go off and do his thing. And Cousins is going to be a big beneficiary of that too. So if this one thing pans out, it kind of pulls the whole parlay together, which sometimes is like what I like to do when I build my parlays, is kind of just figure out who's going off that day and just lean into them. A lot like I did with my Rachaad White parlay, if you remember from last week, Aaron, that I dropped on Twitter and in our Discord. Rachaad White was plus 400 for him to be over, over 3+ receptions. Like I believe it was over 50 yards on the ground, then over 20 yards through the air as well receiving. So that one panned out good. I'm going back to the well, and I'm doing it with Justin Jefferson this week.
I love it. I love it. I know these are. I know this is just the hot take section, but I guess to that point, out of our bets in our Discord that's been going off this week is more geared to our player props. Which who would have known? That's kind of our bread and butter on this show, having a DFS show. So I mean, who would have thought those are the ones that are hitting? So I know that we dropped a nugget last week. Two out of our guys that we threw a 4-person underdog parlay that won 10 times your money. So yeah, good, definitely good drop there. We'll throw those bets in that Discord, and hopefully we can get juicy with some of these wins this week.
Absolutely, yeah, and make sure you're following us on Discord as well. I mean, we have a pretty good setup on there where we have few different categories for pretty much anything that you might be into here. If you're into the gambling scene, or if you're into fantasy, whether it be dynasty, whether it's DFS or redraft advice, we have all those different categories set up, and we have other stuff too, like even college football. If you're into that, we have our guy Robin Baskets. Check him out on Twitter at Robin Baskets. He's big into the college picks, and he gives us some picks on there as well in our college football section. So we have betting advice for NFL, college, even MMA stuff from time to time. We toss in there too. So you can even take pieces of that and build your own parlay beyond just football if you want to. If you really want to get wild and crazy with it, we love that type of stuff here. But join us on there. We're accessible pretty much 24/7 on here. We do sleep at night. We all have young families, but we do our best to get back to our listeners, and we love hearing call outs on the show, especially when it's people coming to us like they did this week, telling us that they won money using a number of our picks. But hey, speaking of winning money, there's no need for you to wait to the Sunday slate to win some money this week here, because we've decided that we're going to be giving you the Thursday night matchup here as our under the lights category here for the rest of the season. But yeah, this Thursday night game, we got the 49ers. They're going up against the New York Giants. And so I guess I'll throw it over to you. Like, who do you like in the game? How do you think it's going to play out? Obviously, Saquon's iffy to play to begin with, but what do you think is going to unfold this Thursday night?
Yeah, I guess we've seen. I mean, we've seen a little bit of the Giants. Early part of the season with them getting kind of embarrassed to start the year, and we've really seen nothing but dominance from San Francisco. Um, so I guess just in general, how I think the game's gonna go is I'm kind of gonna have to go with the Niners. They're favored 10 points. So anytime you're also favored by 2 positions, um yeah, they're favored to win. So how can you argue with that too much? I mean, does that week 1 loss and then actually being down to Arizona last week to start the game, is that enough to kind of turn around the Giants from just starting off so bad to start each game, right? Can they turn around in the first quarter a little bit better, make it a little more interesting? But I think too many signs are just pointing in the direction of San Francisco winning, and that's kind of just what I'm thinking too. So, like I said, on the betting side, the 10-point favorites with San Francisco. That can that's what makes it interesting. Do the Giants, can they turn it into a 1-score game? I think that's what we can maybe get into next. But I still think San Francisco pulls out with the win on Thursday night.
Yeah, I'm essentially thinking in lockstep with you here on this one. I don't see the Giants pulling out a win here, certainly. And Vegas kind of feels the same way with the 10-point spread, the Niners being favored. The over-under, depending on where you look, at the moment it's 44.5. So not crazy low, but not crazy high either. They're not predicting a ton of points in this game, I suppose you could say. And that kind of leads me to my captain's pick here. And I'm going from Captain Carmen days of old. He loved doing this. He loved throwing a defense in his lineup. And I know you do too from time to time. So this might be the first time I've actually made that plunge myself. But as you can imagine, I'm going with the San Francisco 49ers defense. We saw what the Dallas special teams and defensive unit did to the Giants in week 1. The Niners are a legit unit as well. And I just think this is a crush spot for them. They're getting back home. They're going to be ready to go for this one. Daniel Jones is, he can do some things with his legs, but I think if Saquon's not playing as well, I think it just sets up for a long day for this Giants offense, who doesn't have much in the way of pass catchers here. The only Giants I actually have in my lineup are Darren Waller and the kicker Graham Gano. Kind of tells you how down I am on the Giants for this particular week. And then I got a few other 49ers in there as well. McCaffrey, Brock Purdy, and as well as George Kittle. So if you do that, if you do put the defense in there, save some money, it allows you to get all the big guns for the 49ers into your lineup this week. So I made the plunge. I rolled the defense for the first time here. So what are your thoughts on that? And who you have in your captain spot this week?
I like it actually. It's funny. We were almost in another lockstep. I had the defense and I switched my lineup around kind of last minute and kind of switched it up. I like the call. I had it, like I said, but I did want to. I actually wanted to get the man CMC as my captain. So as I played around with lineups, I'm like, man, do I really want to miss out on the CMC points, especially on the 1.5 multiplier there? And I guess the answer was no. So the challenge there is like, what does the rest of the lineup look like? It's funny, I was still able to get Purdy and Kittle as my main Niner offensive players, and then what I chose to do is I kind of picked the Giants wide receivers. I mean, kind of in this strategy, kind of actually hoping that Saquon is out in this strategy, but yeah, I went CMC. I think if to your point, the week one against Dallas, I think if Pollard can go 70 yards, 2 touchdowns in week one, and Arizona scoring 28 points against the Giants, I think CMC can have another big day. And it's really funny. They do have the props out for tomorrow's game already. And CMC's anytime touchdown prop is minus 320.
Wow.
It's crazy. So
I
I'm
knew
like,
you were going to say minus, but 320 is like a jeez.
that is heavy. So I'm like, wow. So see, I was like, I'm gonna follow Vegas a little bit on this one. I want to get a touchdown as my captain. So I'm going CMC here. I kind of just following those odds there. I mean, it's funny, like Chubb on the Browns game was like a minus 172. And obviously we know what happened to Chubb on Monday night. Very, not unfortunate accident there. So, but it's funny though, like that game script was set up for him to score. So I do think CMC is gonna have another big night. So I went CMC as my captain.
Yep, got him in my lineup too. I mean, I think you kind of have to have CMC in your lineup at some point, just based on how the game is supposed to play out, especially with the double-digit point spread in the Niners' favor. But that's gonna wrap up where we're at here for week 3. Should be a really fun week. And make sure you're staying tuned with us on our social medias, on our Discord, also on Twitter or X or whatever the hell Elon Musk is calling it these days. Sunday _surefire, as always here. And until next time, folks. Peace.